Welcome to the magic of D'oyly Carte. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and we are here, as I'm sure you know, to celebrate a birthday this evening, the birthday of probably the best loved of all those extraordinary products of the partnership of Gilbert and Sullivan, the opera Mikado, which first appeared 100 years ago this week, and about which much, much more in the fullness of time. Now, we thought we would preface our celebrations with the stories so far, so to speak. We're going to have a brief glimpse at each of the 9 operettas that preceded the birthday boy, and then part 2 will be devoted entirely to the Mikado. Now, I will introduce the principal singers as we come to them, but first of all, would you meet, please, the Magic of D'oyly Carte Chorus, who have been singing for us. Their watches are a touch wrong. They sang Hark the Hour of 10 is Sounding, from the trial by jury. Then we have the BBC Concert Orchestra, and they are led by Roy Gillard with their conductor, Fraser Golding. Now, history tells us that Gilbert and Sullivan first met one morning in 1869. The fairy godmother was a composer called Frederick Clay, the man best known for his song, I'll Sing These Songs of Araby. He it was who made the very first introductions, but the first spark wasn't until a couple of years later. And it wasn't trial by jury. It was, in fact, a one-act opera called Thespis or the Gods Grow Old. And it was not a success. In fact, with the exception of 2 items, the whole score has completely disappeared. One of those items was Climbing Over Rocky Mountains, which reappeared in the Pirates of Penzance, and that we will be hearing a bit later on. The other was called Little Maid of Arcady, sung for us now by Vivian Tierney.
Little maid of Arcady sat on Cousin Robin's knee, fought in face and form and slim, nobody could rival him. He was brave and she was fair, true they made a pretty pair. Happy maid of Arcady, happy little maiden she, happy little maiden she, happy maid of Arcady, happy maid of Moments fled and moments will happily enough, until after a month or 2, Robin did as robins do. Weary of his lover's play, just as went from way. Wretched little maiden she, wretched maid of Arcady, wretched maid of Arcady. To her little home she crept, there she lay her down and wept. Maidens wept as maidens will, through so pale and thin, until Cousin Richard came to woo. Once again the roses grew. Happy little maiden she, happy maiden Arcady. Happy little maiden she, happy maid of Arcady. Happy maid of
Are really only interesting in the context of all that was to come, but to both Gilbert and Sullivan at the time it was much more an end than it was ever going to be a beginning. They went their separate ways. They both became extremely famous. Gilbert was the most eminent dramatist of his time, just as Sullivan was the most distinguished musician. And then in 1875 came the catalyst. A man called Richard D'oyly Carte appeared, perhaps the greatest British impresario ever. Now he had dreamed of founding a theatre of light opera of his own, and he wanted the best. And so naturally he wanted William Schwenk Gilbert and Arthur Sullivan. So Gilbert was asked to prepare a libretto, which he did. It was called Trial by Jury, and Sullivan thought it was absolutely marvelous. So here we have the defendant. Now he's up in court on a breach of promise of marriage charge, and he's telling us, to his own guitar accompaniment, how he came to fall in and out of love. Here's Merston Reed.
When first my old love I knew, my bosom welled with joy. My riches at her feet I threw, I was a lovesick boy. No terms seemed too extravagant upon her to employ. I used to mope and sigh and pant, just like a lovesick boy. Tick-a-tack, 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 tick-a-tack. I used to mope and sigh and pant, just like a lovesick boy. But joy incessant falls the sense and love unchanged to toy, and she became a more intense unto her lovesick boy. With sweet relief about my flame, and I grew old and coy. At last one morning I became another lovesick boy. Tick-a-tack, 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 tick-a-tack. At last one morning I became another's lovesick boy.
Well, Trial by Jury was a success, but even so, Gilbert and Sullivan still didn't think that their futures lay together. Gilbert went back to the non-musical theatre. Sullivan was even approached by Lewis Carroll, who thought he might like to collaborate on a musical version of a little thing he'd written called Alice in Wonderland. And once again, it was D'oyly Carte who weaved the magic. And magic it really was. Gilbert, all his life, had this extraordinary fascination for magic. Fairy spells, love philters, the inevitable magic lozenge, and so on. And it came to the fore in this very first full-length opera called The Sorcerer. A love potion, my friends, is in far too free circulation. And the first casualty is a lady called Constance, who finds herself suddenly and unaccountably madly in love, not with a rector, but with a deaf old lawyer. Constance is Lorraine Daniels. The deaf old lawyer is John Ellison.
deaf old man, and hear you very badly.
I know not why I love him so, it is enchantment surely, his riot love endeavours through, his tempered weak and holy, his army and absurd rest, and sleeps his serenity. He's everything that I detest, but if the truth must be confessed, I love him very dearly. I love him dearly. Oh, you're everything that I detest, but still I love you dearly. You know that I detest, I love you dearly.
I caught that line, but for the rest, I did not hear it clearly.
Oh joy, the charm works well, and all I know you know I can.
The blind young boy obeys the spell, their throats they all have Oh, be to drive no words can tell how my heart is fighting. It's soon if I am married to say that when you're knighted, I do complain when anxious here. I have not seen it vexes, and not for this example of very lovely Alexis. Oh, very Alexis. Oh, be to drive no words can tell how my heart is
Well, The Sorcerer was reasonably successful. It blew a breath of fresh English air through the London theatre, but what was needed now was a really worldwide success. And the next year, 1878, there it came over the horizon, called HMS Pinafore. Not that the triumph was immediate, it certainly wasn't, because the good ship Pinafore was launched in the May of that year, and she then had to wallow very badly through the doldrums of a heat wave in the summer, before first of all a gentle breeze and then a stiff blow came up and she was away. Box office takings broke all records, touring companies were organized, and Pinafore Mania, which is what it became to be known as, had begun. The idea of the first Sea Lord, not only on stage, but also madly in love, was absolutely irresistible. But the catchphrase of the day came originally from the captain of HMS Pinafore, and here he is, Kenneth Sanford.
good morning.
Sir, good morning.
I hope you're all quite well.
Quite well. And you, sir?
I am in reasonable health and happy to meet you all once more.
You do us proud, sir.
I am the captain of the Pinafore.
And a right good captain, too.
You're very, very good and be understood. I command a right good crew.
We're very, very good and be understood. We command a right good crew.
Though related to a peer, can hand, breathe, and steer, or ship herself a G. I'm never known to quail at the fury of a gale. And I'm never, never sick at sea.
What, never?
No, never.
What, never?
Well, hardly ever.
Not ever sick at sea. Give 3 cheers and 1 cheer more for the hardy captain of the Pinafore. Give 3 cheers and 1 cheer more for the captain of the Pinafore.
I do my best to satisfy you.
Look at you, we're quite content.
You're exceedingly polite, and I think it only right to return the compliment.
We're exceedingly polite, and he thinks it only right to return the compliment.
Bad language or abuse I never, never use, whatever the emergency. To bother it I may occasionally say. I never use a big, big D.
Never?
No, never.
What, never?
Well, hardly ever.
Never was a big, big deal. Give 3 cheers and 1 cheer more for the well-bred captain of the Pinafore. Give 3 cheers and 1 cheer more for the captain of the Pinafore.
Madam, it has been represented to me that you are appalled by my exalted rank. I desire to convey to you officially my assurance that if your hesitation is attributable to that circumstance, it is uncalled for.
Oh, then your lordship is of opinion that married happiness is not inconsistent with discrepancy in rank?
I am officially of that opinion.
That the high and the lowly may be truly happy together, provided that they truly love one another?
Madam, I desire to convey to you officially my opinion that love is a platform upon which all ranks meet.
I thank you, Sir Joseph. I did hesitate, but I will hesitate no longer. He little thinks how eloquently he has pleaded his rival's cause.
Never mind the why and wherefore, love can level ranks and therefore, though his lordship's stations mighty, though stupendous be his brain, though her tastes are mean and flighty, and her fortune poor and plain.
Ring the merry bells of lordship, rend the air with warbling wild, for the union of my lordship with a humble captain's child.
For a humble captain's daughter,
For a gallant captain's daughter,
and a lord who rules the water.
and a tar who plows the water.
Let's hear with joy the laden rent with songs the air above, for the union of a maiden with a man who owns her love.
Never mind the why and wherefore, love can level ranks, and therefore, though your nautical relation in my set would scarcely pass, though you occupy a station in the lower middle class. Ring the merry bells on board ship, rend the air with warbling wild, for the union of my lordship with a humble captain's child.
for a humble captain's daughter,
For a gallant captain's daughter,
And a lord who rules the water.
and a tar who plows the water.
Let's hear with joy the laden rent with songs the air above, for the union of a maiden with a man who owns her love.
Never mind the why and wherefore, love can level ranks, and therefore
for I admit the jurisdiction. Navy, have you played your part? You have carried firm conviction to my hesitating heart.
Ring the merry bells on board ship, rend the air with warbling wild, for the union of my lordship with a humble captain's child.
For a humble captain's daughter,
For a gallant captain's daughter,
And the lord who rules the water.
and a toast of the water. Let the air with joy be laden,
Ring the merry bells on board ship,
for the union of the maiden.
for her union with my lordship. Friends of the air above, for the man who owes her love. Friends of the air above, for the man who
Yes, Pinafore Mania was very catching. It spread like wildfire, even across the Atlantic, where the show was pirated hundreds of times over. In Philadelphia, for example, no fewer than 6 shows were running simultaneously. One newspaper editor called all his staff into his office and he said, "In yesterday's edition of my newspaper, what never, well, hardly ever, appeared 20 times. It will not happen again." What never, they said? And Gilbert said that never again would he write a libretto if it was going to be stolen by the Americans. It's not the money, he said, it was my digestion. That's what's the trouble. So on the 30th of December, 1879, a single performance of the next opera was given, The Pirates of Penzance, at the Royal Bijou Theatre in Paynton, just to settle the copyright before the official premiere the following night in New York. Now, Frederick is apprenticed to the pirate band until he is 21, which he now is, and so he is just about to leave. The catch is, the paradox if you like, that he's a leap year baby, so he only has a birthday 1 year in every 4. And the words of his apprenticeship actually say, apprenticed until his 21st birthday. Just as he was beginning to enjoy the landlubber's life, and all those girls.
Here According to our custom, most persuaded boys, but all in vain the threats we heard. We lay soft upon the rocks, until to somebody occurred a startling paradox.
A paradox!
A paradox, a most ingenious paradox. It keeps it clever, many plots, but not to beat the paradox.
A paradox, a paradox, a most ingenious paradox. We knew your take of curious quips, of facts and contradictions weird, and with the laughter on our lips we wished you there to hear. We said if we could tell it him, how Frederick would the joke enjoy. And so we risked both life and limb to tell it to our boy. That paradox, that most ingenious paradox, with quips and quibbles heard it wrong, but none to beat that paradox. A paradox, a paradox, a most ingenious paradox. For some ridiculous reason, to which, however, I've no desire to be disloyal, some person in authority, I don't know who, very likely the Mikado Royal, has decided that, although for such a beastly month as February, 28 days as a rule are plenty, 1 year in every 4, his days shall be reckoned as 9 and 20. Through some singular coincidence, I shouldn't be surprised if it were owing to the agency of an ill-natured fairy. You are the victim of this clumsy arrangement, having been born in leap year on the 29th of February. And so, by a simple arithmetical process, you'll easily discover that though you've lived 21 years, yet if we go by birthdays, you're only 5. And a little bit over.
You see, yes, with yours my fingers do agree. Outweighed the ways of paradox, at common sense she gaily mocks. Though counting in the usual way is 21 I've been alive. Yet reckoning by my natal day, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I am a little boy of 5.
A paradox, a paradox, a most ingenious paradox. A joyous paradox.
Well, with Meston Reed, you also met there Patricia Leonard and John Aildon. Well, after Pirates came Patience, perhaps the sharpest of the operas so far in terms of topicality. It was Gilbert's reaction to what was called the aesthetic craze, which had once been all lovely and fresh and new, but which was now beginning to turn, in Gilbert's phrase, rather greenery-yallery. Patience is a simple milkmaid who has never known love, not until she meets the poet Archibald Grosvenor. Lady Angela, on the other hand, and her bevy of rapturous maidens, they have known little else. Mind you, as she points out rather hastily, it is love of a particularly pure and unselfish kind, which doesn't make a lot of impression on Archibald. Those ladies have for him about as much charm as a magnet has for a silver churn. But first of all, Patience, who apart from a great aunt, she doesn't think she's loved anybody since she was a baby.
Long years ago, 40 maybe, Remember, pray, remember, pray, he was a hero, in spite of all your pain. The interesting fact remains, he was a little
Tom was a very bad boy. A great big squirt was his favorite toy. He put live shrimps in his father's boots and sewed up sleeves of his Sunday suits. He punched his poor little sisters' heads and cayenne peppered their four-post beds. He plastered their hair with cobbler's wax and dropped hot halfpennies down their backs. The consequence was he was lost totally and married a girl in the corps de ballet. Remember the fable of the magnet and the churn?
But we don't know the fable of the magnet and the churn.
Then I will sing it to you. A magnet hung in a hardware shop, and all around was a laughing crop of scissors and needles, nails and knives, offering love for all their lives. But for I the magnet held no weight, so he charmed I, and it charmed not him. From needles and nails and knives he did turn, for he set his love on a silver churn. A silver churn. He is most aesthetic, very magnetic, fancy took his turn. If I can wheedle a knife or a needle, why not a silver churn? He is most aesthetic, very magnetic, fancy took his turn. If I can wheedle a knife or a needle, why not a silver churn? Iron and steel made express surprise. The needles opened their well-drilled eyes. The penknives fell shut up, no doubt. The scissors did let themselves cut out. The kettles they boiled with rage, 'tis said, while every nail went off its head. And Hitler and Hitler began to roll till a hammer came up and drove them home. It drove them home. It drove them home. Well, this magnetic, very pathetic lover, he lived to learn. By no one ever can magnet ever attract a silver churn. Well, this magnetic, very pathetic lover, he lived to learn. By no one ever can magnet ever attract a silver churn.
Well, Patience ran for over a year, transferring partway through to the brand new theatre that D'oyly Carte had built, called the Savoy, a theatre full of all the most recent innovations like the electric light and the telephone and the queue. Now that was a novel thing. Until the Savoy, there'd always been a terrible scrum round the doors when the cheap seats had been put on sale. Carte imported the idea of the queue from America. and we've been rather good at it ever since, haven't we? From social satire, Gilbert turned in his next operetta to politics. He brought fairyland to Westminster, and he caused the hearts to beat faster in the House of Lords, pumping blue blood, of course. The Lord Chancellor, interesting situation, he is forced to apply to himself, in his official capacity, for permission to marry his ward. But egged on by the Lords Tolala and Mount Ararat, he is convinced that he can win his case. Yes, there is no doubt about it that for the Lord Chancellor of England, love is a nightmare. Here's Alistair Donkin.
Love unrequited robs me of me rest. Love, hopeless love, my ardent soul encumbers. Love, nightmare-like, lies heavy on me chest, and weaves itself into my midnight slumber. When you're lying awake with a dismal headache and reposes to move by anxiety, I conceive you may use any language you choose to indulge in without impropriety. Your brain is on fire, the bedclothes conspire of your usual slumber to plunder you. But your counterpane goes and uncovers your toes, then your sheet slips demurely from under you. The blanky tickles, you feel like mixed pickles, so terribly sharp is the pricking. You're hot and you're cross and you tumble and toss till there's nothing between you and the ticking. Then the bedclothes all creep to the ground in a heap as you pick them all up in a tangle. Next your pillow resigns and politely declines to remain at its usual angle. Well, you get some repose in the form of a dome with hot eyeballs and head ever aching. But your slumbering team is such horrible dreams that you'd very much better be waking. You dream you are crossing the channel and tossing about in a steamer from Harwich, which is something between a large bathing machine and a very small second-class carriage. And you're giving a treat, penny icicled meats to a party of friends and relations. They're a ravenous horde, and they all came on board at Sloane Square and South Kensington stations. And bound on that journey, you find your attorney who started that morning from Devon. He's a bit undersized, you don't feel surprised when he tells you he's only 11. When you're driving like mad with this singular lad, by the by, the ship's now a four-wheeler. And you're playing round games, and he calls you bad names, and you tell him that's ties pay the dealer. But this you can't stand, so you'll throw up your hand, and you'll find you're as cold as an icicle. In your shirt and your socks, the black zipper go cloth, putting Salisbury Plain on a bicycle. And he and the crew are on bicycles too, which they've somehow or other invested in. And he's telling the tars all the particle laws of a company he's interested in. It's a scheme of devices to get at low prices all goods and crop mixes to cables, which tickle the sailors by treating retailers as though they were all vegetables. You get a good spade with the planter's small tradesman first take off his boots with a boot tree. His legs will take root and his fingers will shoot, and they've lost them bud like a fruit tree. From the green go to tree you get grapes and green pea, cauliflower, pineapple and cranberries. While the pager cook plant cherry brandy will grant apple puffs and free corns and banberries. The shares at a penny and ever so many are taken by Rothschild and Baring. And just as if you were allotted to you, you're awake with a shout of despairing. You're a regular wreck with a cricket neck and the one you storm your head on the floor and your needles and pins and sews, so shitting your face to the creepy and electric and sleeping your cramping your toes and the blindness, the fluffing your tongue on the feverish lung and the first of your days and the general said that you haven't been sleeping in clover. But the darkness has passed and it's daylight at last. The night has been long, ditto, my soul. And thank goodness they're both of them over.
Much distressed to see your lordship in this condition.
Ah, my lord, I feel the force of your remark, but I am here in two capacities, and they clash, my lord, they clash. I deeply grieve to say that in declining to entertain my last application to myself, I presumed to address myself in terms to render it impossible for me ever to apply to myself again. It was a most painful scene, my lord. Most painful.
This is what it is to have two capacities. Let us be thankful that we are persons with no capacity whatever.
Oh, come. Remember, you are a very just and kindly old gentleman, and you need have no hesitation in approaching yourself, so that you do so respectfully and with a proper show of deference.
Do you really think so?
I do.
Well, I will nerve myself for another effort, and if that fails, I resign myself to my fate.
If you go in, you're sure to win. Yours will be the charming lady. Be your lord, the ancient saw. They can't never want their lady. Never, 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 they can't never want their lady. Every journey has an end. When at the worst affairs will mend. Knock at dawn when day is nigh. Hustle your horse and don't say die.
Dies at such a price, is not worth a more of lady. He's so kind to bear in mind, they can never want their lady. Never, 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 they can never want their lady. While the sunshine made your hay, where a will is there's a way. Hear the lion in his lair, none but the brave deserve the fair.
I'll take heart and make a start, though I fear the prospect shady. Much I'd spend to gain my end. Faint heart never won fair lady. Never, 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 faint heart never won fair lady.
Shall nothing win, none is fit but water spin. In for a penny,
In for a pound,
it's not a fit, the world go round. Nothing venture, nothing win, none is fit but water spin. In for a penny, in for a pound, it's not a fit, the world.
Well, it goes without saying that by this time Gilbert and Sullivan were a huge success, and they were both very rich men indeed, earning at least twice as much as the Prime Minister of England, Mr. Gladstone. But even riches, you know, they couldn't get you a ticket for a first night to one of their operas. A member of the wealthy Sassoon family approached Sullivan on one occasion. Impossible, said Sullivan, quite impossible. On the other hand, if you would change the first letter of your name to a B, maybe I could squeeze you into the orchestra. Sassoon, bassoon. But there was one more to go before we come to the main purpose of our evening, which is the Mikado, and that was Princess Ida. Now, she is the lovely daughter of King Gama, and she runs Castle Adamant, which is an extremely feminist college for women, where they, for example, rise every morning at cockcrow, although the actual crowing is done by an extremely accomplished hen. Well, our whole cast come together before the interval for our finale with To Yield to Such a Foe.
Till the prince of such a boy she will rise, who quick away him will rise in my life. But he is strong and tall, is very and tall. Let I die, before I go my thoughts will fly.
Music from Princess Ida ends the first part of this evening's tribute to the magic of D'oyly Carte, which is coming live from the Royal Festival Hall in London. The concert, presented by John Dunn, is being given by former members of the D'oyly Carte Opera Company, with the BBC Concert Orchestra, leader Roy Gillard, and conducted by Fraser Goulding. The second half will be devoted to highlights from the Mikado, whose centenary is the main reason for tonight's celebrations. That'll be in about 20 minutes' time after the interval. So now to our interval talk, and we're going to hear from Peter Gammond, who examines the separate careers of William Schwenk Gilbert and Arthur Seymour Sullivan.
It seems likely that the ever-fanciful mind of W.S. Gilbert was hard at work in the account he later gave of his first meeting with Arthur Sullivan. They may have met casually before, but Gilbert always maintained that they were first properly introduced at a rehearsal of an operetta called Ages Ago, which Gilbert had written in collaboration with Sullivan's friend Frederick Clay. It was a German Reed production at the Royal Gallery of Illustration, and the score was dedicated to Sullivan. Not to be upstaged by the already celebrated composer, Gilbert launched into this bit of impromptu nonsense.
My friend Clay and I have been discussing a technical point upon which you may be able to throw some light. My contention is that if a musician who is a master of all instruments has a musical theme to express, he can express it as readily upon the simple tetrachord of Mercury, in which, as we all know, there are no diatonic intervals whatever, as upon the more elaborate disdiapason with the 3 tetrachords and the redundant note, which, as I need not remind a composer of your distinction, embraces in its perfect consonance all the single, double, and inverted chords.
Sullivan solemnly answered that he would like to think it over before giving a definite reply. It was already rather typical of their different characters and the curious association they were to have over the years. That happened in 1868. It was not until 1871 that Gilbert and Sullivan first collaborated. This was on a 2-act opera, Thespis, commissioned by John Hollingshead at the Gaiety Theatre. Gilbert recalls that it was put together in 3 weeks, ran for 80 days, but, so he wrote,
it was a crude and ineffective work, as might be expected, taking into consideration the circumstances of its rapid composition.
Sadly, the score of Thespis disappeared, only 2 numbers surviving. One of them, the ingenious chorus climbing over Rocky Mountain, which was reused in The Pirates of Penzance. The one person who seems to have foreseen the possibility of a permanent collaboration between the composer and the humorist was Richard D'oyly Carte. His opportunity to help history on its way came when he was planning a production of Offenbach's La Péricole at the Royalty Theatre. The work wasn't long enough to provide the expected full evening's entertainment. By a stroke of good luck, Gilbert happened to drop in at a rehearsal, and Carte asked him if he had a suitable 1-act piece to fill out the programme. By a further stroke of good luck, Gilbert had just the thing. He'd been working on a short piece called Trial by Jury, which had been published in miniature form in the humorous magazine Fun some 7 years earlier. He was putting it into shape as a stage work for which Carl Rosa had been asked to write the music. Carte begged Gilbert to take it along to Arthur Sullivan. Gilbert read the libretto to the composer, who was delighted and highly amused by it. Carl Rosa was persuaded to relinquish the rights, and Sullivan was inspired to write a score in his usual 3 weeks or so. It was here that the famous partnership began in earnest.
When I, good friends, was called to the bar, I'd an appetite fresh and hearty, but I was as many young barristers are, an impecunious party. I'd a swallow-tail coat of a beautiful blue, and a brief which I bought of a movie. A couple of shots and a collar or 2, and a ring that looked like a ruby. A couple of shots and a collar or 2, and a ring that looked like a ruby. In Westminster Hall I danced a dance like a semi-despondent fury, for I thought I never should hit on a chance of addressing a British jury. But I soon got tired of third-class journeys and dinners of bread and water. So I fell in love with Richard Turley's elderly ugly daughter. So I fell in love with Richard Turley's elderly ugly daughter. The Richard turned, he jumped with joy and replied to my fond professions. Reap the reward, you pluck me boy, and failure at Middlesex sessions. You'll soon get used to her looks, said he, and a very nice girl you will find. Oh, she very well pass for 43 in the dusk with a light behind her. She very well pass for 43 in the dusk with a light behind her.
Part of the judge's song from Trial by Jury. Well, much has been said and written about the Savoy operas, but there is also room for fascinating, albeit inconclusive, speculation as to what Gilbert and Sullivan would have achieved separately if fate had not ordained their joint successes. If either would have produced anything to match the inspiration and staying power of the operettas, would either of them, without these frivolous distractions, have risen to greater or more serious heights in their respective fields? Many people, including Queen Victoria, who had seen Arthur Sullivan as a potential leader of a new revival of English music, felt that he had wasted his talent. An oft-quoted entry in the first edition of Grove's famous musical dictionary, Grove was a close friend of Sullivan's, put this lament into permanent form.
May we not fairly ask whether the ability so conspicuous in these operettas is always to be employed on works which, from their very nature, must be even more fugitive than comedy in general? Surely the time has come when so able and experienced a master of voice, orchestra, and stage effect, master too of so much genuine sentiment, may apply his gifts to the production of a serious opera on some subject of abiding human or national interest.
It can justifiably be argued that the attention the Savoy operas have received has seriously diverted attention from Sullivan's more academic endeavours. In recent years, the Sir Arthur Sullivan Society has done much to draw attention to these. Even so, we must come to the inescapable conclusion that nothing else he wrote was unquestionably first-rate. While his longer and more serious works like the oratorio The Golden Legend and the opera Ivanhoe are at best representative of the somewhat mawkish Victorian drawing-room school of music. The success of some of Sullivan's earlier works stemmed from their grace and tunefulness, merits which the Victorian public also admired. It was when he was at his least pretentious that he wrote his most attractive music, and this seems, with hindsight, to point the way to his potential as a writer of operettas. Sullivan had been a child prodigy. He had his first piece of music published when he was only 13 and still a chorister at the Chapel Royal. Later, at the Royal Academy of Music, he was the first winner of the newly created Mendelssohn Scholarship, which allowed him further study at the Leipzig Conservatory. It was there, for a student's concert, that he wrote his first really successful work, the incidental music to Shakespeare's The Tempest. The glowing reviews it received when first performed in England under August Manns at the Crystal Palace in 1862 made him well known almost overnight. Can the future genius of the comic opera world be detected in these light and highly professional strains? The eventual collaboration with Gilbert seems to have been the catalyst that brought out the very best in Sullivan, at least that very special and generally underrated talent, a true musical sense of humour, such as we also find in Offenbach. A further rare asset was Sullivan's gift for parody. He frequently even made fun of himself and the morbidly wishy-washy Victorian drawing-room songs that he wrote to the lyrics of poets like Adelaide Ann Proctor and Lord Alfred Tennyson. Probably his greatest commercial success, outside the operas, was the ballad The Lost Chord. It is unquestionably memorable, but one can hardly apply the word inspiration to a melody which begins with the same note repeated 13 times. But again, it's Sullivan's acute sense of parody that makes it so successful. Sullivan, after 1875, was always torn between these musical extremes. There is little doubt that he would have liked to have been considered a great and serious composer. We get the impression that he never fully realized the unique value of his rare, humorous, light touch. Like everyone else, he believed that the Savoy operas would prove ephemeral. It was the continual drag of loyalties, plus a liver complaint that plagued him through most of his adult years, that made him almost as touchy as Gilbert in the end, and led to the inevitable petty quarrels. A guilty conscience is always unsettling. He truly felt, and was always being persuaded of it, that he had wasted a great talent. He was undoubtedly prominent and successful, he moved in the highest social circles, and he was knighted in 1883, but he remained unfulfilled. Perhaps Sullivan would have written more substantial works had he spent his career apart from the luring wit of W.S. Gilbert. It seems doubtful, though, in view of the insistent fact that he wrote very little that was truly memorable outside that famous partnership. After all, even in hard terms of the time spent, he didn't really waste all that much time on the comic operas. Each one took up only a few weeks' endeavour, and they were well spaced out with at least a year, sometimes 2 or more between them. In much of the time otherwise at his disposal, he was hardly an assiduous composer. He spent a considerable amount of time teaching, more as a conductor, appearing regularly at the Leeds Festival and elsewhere, and even more gadding about all over the world, enjoying himself with his lady friends and going to the races. The money that the Savoy operas made for him came in very useful. English music at this time was still in the trough that had been the result of the successive domination of Handel, Italian opera, Mendelssohn, and the German tradition. The independent voices of Elgar and the later nationalist composers was still unheard. If some thought that Sullivan might spark off an English Renaissance, there was little foundation in the music he wrote, which was never entirely English in character and drew nothing from folk song sources. Much of Sullivan's music was in imitation of European antecedents, that he also would have been less well known if it was not for his work with Sullivan. It's based on slightly different reasons. His writing would probably have been much the same, witty and ever facetious. He had no pretences to being a great literary figure. The flavour of the operas, and indeed many of the stories, are to be found in the Bab Ballads, which had already made him a reputation by 1875, and also in the various plays which he produced with variable success. Tom Cobb, which was written in 1875, the same year as Trial by Jury, is in the same slightly preposterous vein.
What's the matter? What's wrong?
You mentioned the name Tom Cobb just now, sir. I had a dear, dear friend of that name once. He was to have married my daughter, sir, but now, alas, he's gone. Gone!
Don't be too upset, Colonel, because he's come back.
My dear young friend, can you assure me that poor, dear, dead and gone Tom Cobb is still alive? How do you know? Wait, I seem to see a resemblance. Are you perhaps his brother?
His brother? Oh, get out.
No, I thought perhaps you might be. I seem to see a likeness.
I should think you did.
Mind you, a very distant likeness, sir. A faint, shadowy, ghostly indication of a remote family resemblance. That's all, sir. But tell me where he is, that I might embrace him, sir.
He stands before you, Colonel, but you needn't embrace him.
Stands before me, sir? I don't understand you. Do you mean to tell me, to me very face, that you are my dear friend Tom Cobb? Have you any proof of this astonishing occurrence?
Well, if the marks on my linen is to be trusted.
Ah, sir, beware. Beware of jumping to conclusions on insufficient grounds. Take it from me, sir, you are mistaken.
A brief excerpt from Tom Cobb. Gilbert's other works have mainly disappeared, to be brought to light occasionally as curiosities. It was not that they were in any way ineffectual, they were simply so much of their period in style, humour and reference. The same applies, of course, to the librettos of the Savoy operas, but here their archaic style and formal, often elegant wit are heightened and given immortality by their association with such sparkling and timeless music. This is not to deny their own basic excellence. Gilbert has been hailed as the master lyricist of them all by such later experts as Lawrence Hart and Ira Gershwin. But his gems would probably have been forgotten by now if they had remained in isolation. It has been claimed that Gilbert's work with other composers was rather more successful than Sullivan's work with other librettists and poets. Even so, there is very little of it that we remember. The scores of the Mountebanks written with Alfred Sellier, His Excellency with Osmond Carr, Fallen Fairies with Edward German, and the earlier German reed pieces with Frederick Clay are now forgotten delights. Sullivan, without Gilbert, would probably have been another Sterndale Bennett or a Joseph Barnett, a Benedict or a Bishop, a worthy but minor composer. Gilbert, without Sullivan, would have mingled with the Becketts and the Hoods. It's difficult to explain the magic that Gilbert and Sullivan made together. It is even more difficult to explain away the awful banality of the majority of the songs that Sullivan wrote with other people, many of them while he was doing such memorable work with Gilbert. By that lucky stroke of fortune, Gilbert came along to unleash a vein of nonsense and frivolity in Sullivan, partly by his lyrical expertise, partly by his clever wit. Before we return to tonight's concert in the Royal Festival Hall, let's assure ourselves once more that the right musical vein was always there, just waiting to be tapped, by listening to one of the best pieces of music that Sullivan wrote outside the operettas, the overture Di Ballo, written for the Birmingham Festival in 1870, just before W.S. Gilbert first breezed into his life.
Part of Sir Arthur Sullivan's Overture Di Ballo, played by the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra with Sir Charles Groves conducting. Peter Gammond was your interval talk host this evening, and the quotations were read by John Marsh. Well, it's now time to return to the Royal Festival Hall here in London, where John Dunn is about to introduce part 2 of our special gala concert.
Thank you very much indeed. Welcome back to the Royal Festival Hall and on to the birthday boy, the Mikado, that first saw the light of day 100 years ago on the 14th of March, 1885. It's been parodied time and time again. It's been reworked and reset. It's even been banned on one ludicrous occasion for 6 weeks in 1907 in case it offended the Crown Prince of Japan on a visit. But still, it holds pride of place as the favourite of all the Gilbert and Sullivan operas. More than that, it is still today the most performed musical play in Britain. Well, now we are in the town of Titipu, as if you didn't know, where Nanki Poo, disguised as a wandering minstrel, although in fact he is of course the son of the Mikado, he's looking for the girl that he loves called Yum Yum. The trouble is that she is betrothed to a fellow who used to be the tailor, a humble tailor, but who has since been elevated to be the Lord High Executioner, and that's Coco, and he has a list of all the prime targets for his attentions. Well, then we meet Yum Yum and her chorus of school friends as they flutter onto the scene. She and Nanki Poo meet again, and they realize the awful plight that they're in, so near and yet so far. And things are not made any better when a directive comes from the Mikado himself to say that the town of Titipu is lagging behind in the execution stakes. He wants a few more heads to roll. What's going to be done? Civic pride is at stake. The pride of Pooh Bah is always at stake. Coco's at his wit's end. What he does we shall come to, but first of all, let us meet those gentlemen of Japan.
Gentlemen of Japan, of many a thousand charms, of many a screen and plan. We figure in lively pain, our attitudes clear and great, no wrong we think it takes. If you think they'll work by strings, like a Japanese marionette, you don't understand these things. It is simply called etiquette. Perhaps it's supposed to be strong, can't keep it up all day long. If that's the right idea, you're wrong. If that's your idea, you're wrong. If you want to know who we are gentlemen of Japan. From first and drop on street and on menu, drop. On bars and drop on street and
Gentlemen, I pray you tell me where the gentle maiden dwelleth named Yum Yum. The word of Coco, in pity speak, oh speak, I pray you.
Why, who are you who ask this question?
And I'll wandering in Stella, a thing of shreds and tattoos, of ballad songs and snatches, and dreamy lullaby. My catalog is come to every passion ranging, and to your humors changing, I tune my supple song, I tune my song. In sentimental mood, I my patriotic ballads come and ride. For whatever country's banner may be planted, for the local banners are defied. Our warriors in serried ranks are turned, never fear of they concede if they do. And they shouldn't be surprised if they should tremble before the mighty troops to the PG Blue. We shouldn't be surprised if they should tremble when we raise our arms before the mighty troops to the PG Blue. And they call for the song of the sea, we'll be the captain rod. The yo-heave-ho, for the wind is free, her anchors are fit from the helm to lee. Hurrah for the hope of now! Yo-ho-heave-ho, hurrah for the hope of now! They aloft the howling breeze, they tickle our landsman's taste. But the happiest of our sailors east, his country's down at an inland town, with his Nancy on his knees. Yo-ho! And he's all around the waist. With tap and capsail up we go, with the windlass strings us round. With the yo-heave-ho, and run below, we'll run for the homeward on. With the yo-heave-ho, and run below.
Taken from the county jail by a set of curious chances, liberated then on bail, on me own recognized senses, wafted by a favouring gale, as one sometimes is in trances, to a height that few can scale, save below and weary dances, surely never had a mail, under such circumstances, so adventurous a tale, which may rank with most romances, taken from the county jail, by a set of curious chances, surely never had a mail, so adventurous a tale. To the Lord High Executioner, depart to the noble Lord, High Executioner, to the Lord High Executioner, depart to the noble Lord. someday it may happen that a victim must be found. I've got a little list of society offenders who might well be underground and who never would be missed. There's the pestilential nuisances who write for autographs, or people who have flabby hands and irritating laughs, or children who are up in dates and floor you with them flat, or persons who in shaking hands shake hands with you like that, and all third persons who on spoiling tete-a-tete insist. They'd none of them be missed.
He's got them on the list, and they'll none of them be missed. They'll none of them be missed.
There's the banjo serenader and the others of his race, and the piano organist. I got him on the list, and the people who eat peppermint and puff it in your face. They never would be missed. Then the idiot who praises with enthusiastic tone all centuries but this and every country but his own. And the lady from the provinces who dresses like a guy, who doesn't think she dances but would rather like to try. And that singular anomaly who wrote this little list. Well, I don't think he'd be missed. Or perhaps Gilbert would be missed.
He's got him on the list, and I don't think he'll be missed. I'm sure he'll not be missed.
And that nice Ibrius nuisance who just now is rather right, the judicial humorist, I got him on the list. All funny fellas, comic men and clowns of private life, they'd none of them be missed. And apologetic statesmen of a compromising kind, such as, what you call him, Thingamy-Bob, but likewise, well, never mind. And and what's his name? And also, Maggie who? But hard filling up the blanks, I'd rather leave to you. But it really doesn't matter whom you put upon the list, for they'd none of them be missed.
You may put them on the list, and they'll none of them be missed. They'll none of them be missed.
See, my bride and her sisters approach, and any little compliments on your part, such as abject groggles in characteristic Japanese attitudes, would be esteemed a favor.
No money, no grovel.
Everything is a source of fun. Nobody's safe or we care for none. Life is a joke that has just begun. Three little maids from school. Three little maids who all are merry, come to the ladies' seminary, free from genius to Larry. Three little maids from school. Three little maids from school. One little maid is a bright young gal. Two little maids in a tender scarf. Three little maids is a total summer. Three little maids from school. From three little maids take one away. Two little maids remain and play. Won't have to wait very long, they say. Three little maids from school. Three little maids who all are merry, come from the ladies' seminary, free from genius to Larry. Three little maids from school. Three little maids from school.
At last we are alone.
Oh, if you please, I think Johannes had better not come too near. The laws against flirting are excessively severe. Being engaged to Coco, you know.
Being engaged to Coco. Were you not to talk of plighted, I would say, and not one, long one, let us be united, let us meet other's home. I would grant a reconciliation, but these years are not to us, and to mark my admiration, I would kiss you fondly thus. I would kiss me fondly thus.
But as I'm engaged to Coco, to embrace you thus con poco, would distinctly be no joke, and for yam I should get Toco. Toco.
So in spite of all temptation, such a theme I'll not discuss, and on no consideration will I kiss you fondly thus. Will I kiss you fondly thus? Let me make it clear to you, this is what I'll never do. This is what I'll never do. This is what I'll never do.
You never do.
I'll never do.
You never do.
This is what I'll never
Substitute. Oh, certainly, nothing easier. Pooh-Bah, I appoint you Lord High Substitute.
I should be delighted. Such an appointment would realize my fondest dreams. But no, at any sacrifice, I must set bounds to my insatiable ambition. I am so proud, if I allowed my family pride to be my guide, I'd volunteer to quit this sphere instead of you in a minute or two. but family pride must be denied and set aside and mortified and mortified.
My brain it teems with endless scheme for good and new, for titty-poo, but if I flit the benefit that I diffuse, the town would lose. Now every man to aid his clan should plot and plan as best he can.
I heard one day a gentleman say that criminals who are caught in two can hardly feel the pain to steal, and so are slain without much pain. If this is true, it's jolly for you, your courage grew to bid us adieu. I am so proud.
My brain it teems with endless scheme for good and new, for titty-poo, but if I flit the benefit that I diffuse, the town would lose. Now every man to aid his clan should plot and plan as best he can. And so, although I'm ready to go, yet recollect what disrespect did I neglect to thus effect the same direct. So I object.
And so, although I wish to go, and greatly find to brightly shine, and take the line of a hero fine with 3 from 9, I must decline, and go and show a friend and foe how much you dare. I'm quite aware it's your affair, yet I declare I take your share, but I don't much care. I must,
so I object, 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 so I object. Sailors on the side, sitting down, in a prison with a light long, awaiting the sensation of a short chop, of a chippy chopper on a big flat block. To sitting on the side, sitting down, in a prison with a light long, awaiting the sensation of a short chop, from a chippy chopper on a big black block. A dull dog, a light long, a short chop, a big black block. To sitting on the side, sitting awaiting the sensation of a chippy chopper on a big black.
Coco is a man with a problem, so whose head is going to be on the block? Suddenly he has a solution. Nanki Poo, of course. He will be executed, not now, but in 1 month's time, in return for a month's marriage to Yum Yum. Terrific. The only snag is that according to ancient Japanese custom, if a husband is beheaded, the wife has to be buried alive with him. A howdy-do indeed. Coco's beside himself. So in the nick of time, before the Mikado actually arrives, they decide to pretend that there's been an execution, and then Nanki Poo and Yum Yum can go off into hiding. So enter that most humane Mikado, within his entourage a lady called Carte-18-3-1985. Now she is the only person who knows not only that Nanki Poo is the Emperor's son, but also where he is. And that turns out to be the reason for the Mikado's visit. He is naturally delighted to hear that some poor unfortunate fellow has lost his head. But where is his son? Blind panic from Coco this time. There is only one solution. Coco must marry Carte-18-3-1985 and keep her quiet, and they will be as happy as the flowers that bloom in the spring, tra-la. Well, Carte-18-3-1985 is caught feeling partially sorry for herself and partially touched by this ludicrous story of the tom-tit that she agrees. And then, of course, Nanki Poo re-emerges with his Yum Yum in time for the finale. But first of all, here is that young lady preparing for her month of bliss before breaking the bad news to Nanki Poo.
My son whose rays are all ablaze with ever-living glory does not deny his majesty. He's gone to tell a story. It is his name, my blush for shame, so kindly be indulgent. At peace and bold in fiery gold, he glories all effort.
Frankie Poole. Today we are to be wedded, and you're to be beheaded, and then I'm to be buried alive. Oh, you see my difficulty.
Yes, and I see my own. If I insist on you carrying out your promise, I doom you to a hideous death. If I release you, you marry Coco at once.
Here's how they do, if I marry you. When your time has come to perish, then the maiden whom you cherish must be slaughtered too. Here's how they do, here's how they do.
Here's the mess, it's bottomless. I must die without a wedding, let the bitter tears I'm shedding witness my distress. Here's the mess, here's the mess. Here's the state of things, to her life she clings. Matrimonial devotion doesn't seem to suit her notion. Burial it brings. Here's the state of things. Here's the state of things. With a passion that's intense, I worship and adore. But the laws of common sense we ought to ignore. If what I say is true, she's dead to marry you. Here's a pretty state of things. Here's a pretty how-do-do. Here's a pretty state of things. A pretty state of things.
Here's how they do.
Here's how they do.
Lord, if what he says is true, I
cannot marry you. Here's a pretty, pretty state of things. Here's a pretty how do you do. Close thing that, for here comes the Mikado.
A more humane Mikado never did in Japan exist. To nobody's second I've certainly reckoned a true philanthropist. It is my very humane endeavor to make to some extent this evil liver a running river of harmless merriment. My object all sublime I shall achieve in time, to let the punishment fit the crime, the punishment fit the crime, and make each prisoner pent, unwillingly represent a source of innocent merriment, of innocent merriment. Society sinners who chatter and bleat and board are sent to hear sermons from mystical Germans who preach from 10 till 4. The amateur tenor whose vocal villain is all desire to shirk shall during off hours exhibit his powers to Madame Tussauds wax work. The lady who dyes a chemical yellow or stains her grey hair puce or pinches her figure is painted with vigor and a permanent walnut juice. The idiot who in railway carriages scribbles on window panes, we only suffer to ride on a buffer in a parliamentary terrain. My optical sublime I shall achieve in time, to let the punishment fit the crime, the punishment fit the crime. I make it prisoner pent, unwillingly represent a source of innocent merriment, of innocent merriment. Optical sublime, he will achieve in time, to let the punishment fit the crime, the punishment fit the crime. I make it prisoner pent, unwillingly represent advertising quack who wearied with tales of countless cures. His teeth I've enacted shall all be extracted by terrified amateurs. The music hall singer attends a series of masses and fugues and ops, by Bach interwoven with score of Beethoven and classical Monday pops. The billiard shark whom anyone catches his doom's extremely hard is made to dwell in a dungeon cell. on a spot that's always barred, and there he plays extravagant matches in fiddler's finger stalls, on a cloth untrue, with a twist and a cue, and elliptical I shall achieve in time to let the punishment fit the crime, the punishment fit the crime, and make it prisoner pent, unwillingly represent a source of innocent merriment, of innocent merriment. His only goes sublime, he will achieve in time to let the punishment fit the crime, the punishment fit the crime, and make it prisoner pent, unwillingly represent a source of innocent merriment, of innocent merriment.
This. While Carte-18 is single, I prefer to be a disembodied spirit. When Carte-18 is married, existence will be as welcome as the flowers in spring. The flowers that bloom in the spring, tra-la, we promise the merry sunshine. As we merrily dance and we sing, tra-la, we welcome the hope that we bring, tra-la, of a summer of roses and wine, of a summer of roses and wine. And that's what we mean when we say that a thing is welcome as flowers that bloom in the spring. Tra-la-la-la-la, tra-la-la-la, the flowers that bloom in the spring. Tra-la-la-la-la, tra-la-la-la, tra-la-la-la-la. The flowers that bloom in the spring, tra-la, have nothing to do with the case. I've got to take under me wing, tra-la, a most unattractive old thing, tra-la, with a caricature of a face, with a caricature of a face. And that's what I mean when I say or I sing. Oh, bother the flowers that bloom in the spring. Tra-la-la-la-la, tra-la-la-la-la. Oh, bother the flowers of spring. Tra-la-la-la-la, tra-la-la-la-la.
Katisha, you know not what you say. Listen. On a tree by a river, little Tom Tit sang willow, tit, willow, tit, willow. And I said to him, Dicky bird, why do you sit singing willow, tit, willow, tit, willow? Is it weakness of intellect, birdie, I cried, or a rather tough worm in your little inside? With a shake of his poor little head, he replied, oh, willow, tit, willow, tit, willow. He slept at his chest as he sat on that bough, singing willow, tit, willow, tit, willow. And a cold perspiration bespangled his brow. Oh, willow, tit, willow, tit, willow. He sobbed and he sighed, and a gurgle he gave. Then he plunged himself into the billowy wave. And an echo arose from the suicide grave. Oh, willow, tit, willow, tit, willow. Now I feel just as sure as I'm sure that my name isn't Willow, tit, willow, tit, willow. That 'twas blighted affection that made him exclaim, oh, willow, tit, willow, tit, willow. And if you remain careless and obdurate, I shall perish as he did, and you will know why. Though I probably shall not exclaim as I die. Oh, willow, tit, willow, tit, willow.
Because I'm just a teeny weeny wee bit bloodthirsty, will you?
Hate you, Katisha. Is there not beauty even in bloodthirstiness?
My idea exactly. There is beauty in the welcome of the blast. There is grandeur in the growling of the gale. There is eloquence of roaring and the lion is the roaring and the tiger is the lashing of its tail.
Yes, I like to see a tiger from the Congo, the Niger is flashing and the flashing of his tail.
The volcanoes have a splendor that is grim, and earthquakes only terrify the gods. But to him with scientific there is nothing that's horrific in the falling of a flight upon the board.
Yes, in spite of all my meekness, if I have a little weakness, it's a passion for a flight of thunderbolts. If that is so, sing Daddy down, Daddy, and Daddy down, Daddy, I'll take so one. Away with you, and merrily, merry, don't hurry, tell me someday is done. There is beauty in extreme old age. Do fancy you are elderly enough? Information I'm requesting on a subject interesting as a maiden, all the better when she's tough.
Oh, and this wait a minute is the general opinion that she lasts a bit longer when she's tough.
I'm old enough to marry, do you think? Won't you wait until you're 80 in the shade? There's a fascination perhaps going to ruin the romantic. Do you think you want to be delayed decayed?
To the matter that you mention, I have given some attention, and I think I am sufficiently decayed.
If that is so, say carry on, carry on, carry on, carry on, thanks so on. Away with the and carry on, totally, totally, someday is done. If that is so, say carry on, carry on, carry on, carry on, thanks so on. Away with the and carry on, totally, someday is done. Sing carry on, carry on, carry on, totally, someday is done.
possibly be more satisfactory?
Oh, he's gone and made you know.
Yeah.
You're regularly very full with the Mary, I think you had better succumb.
Yeah.
And John are expressions of glee.
On this subject I pray you be dumb. Your notions, though many, are not worth a penny the word. Your guidance is mum. Give a very good bargain in me.
On this subject I pray you be dumb. We think you have better succumb. You'll find there a penny will rent for a penny will rent for a penny. There are some profession to see. There are lots of profession to see. There are lots of profession to see.
The threatened cloud has passed away.
Shines the dawn.
Although the night may come too soon.
It is years of afternoon.
Then let us joy and God with laughing song and merry dance. With laughing song and merry dance. With laughing song and merry dance. With laughing song and with joy and shout and joy and shout and ringing cheer. Sing all music, sing all the race and instrument. With joy and shout and ringing cheer. Sing all the race and instrument. With joy and shout and ringing cheer. Sing all the race and instrument.
And there we end our tribute to Gilbert and Sullivan's Mikado, 100 years old on March the 14th. It formed the second part of our special gala concert this evening, The Magic of D'oyly Carte, given by former members and the chorus of the D'oyly Carte Opera Company. The featured soloists were Lorraine Daniels, Patricia Leonard, Vivian Tierney, John Aildon, Alistair Donkin, Meston Reed and Kenneth Sanford, with the BBC Concert Orchestra leader Roy Gillard, conducted by the former music director of D'oyly Carte, Fraser Goulding. The concert was presented by John Dunn and produced by Tim MacDonald in association with Raymond Gubbe Limited.